Rick Massey just made a prediction that's causing serious drama in the tennis world.
Hey guys, let's talk about the #1 player in the world, Iga. Yes, Iga. It's amazing.
The legendary coach who trained Serena Williams decided to pick his favorite for 2026 WTA dominance. And let's just say his choice has people questioning everything. Coco Gauff, America's Golden Girl and current Australian Open champion, got completely overlooked. The person he chose instead? That's where things get really interesting. When was the last time you saw someone publicly choose one person over another and immediately knew it was going to backfire? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this situation is messier than anyone expected.
Let's talk a little bit about Iga at the French. This is a stat, you just can't make this up. 13 times she gave a bagel. Yeah, fresh out of the oven at the French Open. People don't realize at the highest level, to beat someone 6-0 is very difficult. It just adds to her greatness. She's locked, she's loaded, always ready to launch. Okay, Iga, one of the greatest clay court players ever, okay, especially at Roland Garros.
So Rick Massey, the man who helped shape Serena Williams into the legend she became, just went on social media and basically told the world that Coco Gauff isn't his pick to dominate women's tennis in 2026. Instead, he's putting all his chips on Iga Świątek, calling her the Polish Punisher, and predicting she'll be #1 before May. His exact words on Twitter were that while Gauff, Świątek, and Mira Andreeva all have a shot, Świątek is the one who's proven and will be groovin' and movin'. Cool rhyme scheme, Rick. Really subtle. Now let's talk about why this is such a wild take. Coco Gauff just won the Australian Open. She's the defending champion of one of tennis's 4 biggest tournaments. She's 20 years old and already has 2 Grand Slam titles to her name. She's American, which means she's got massive support and endorsements. And yet, Massey looked at all of that and said, nah, I'm going with the Polish player instead. The audacity is kind of impressive, honestly. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Massey isn't just some random tennis coach throwing out hot takes for engagement. This is the guy who coached Venus and Serena Williams when they were young. He's been around the sport forever and is generally respected for his tennis knowledge. So when he makes a prediction like this, people actually pay attention. Which means his snub of Gauff isn't just going to disappear into the void of bad tennis takes. It's going to follow him around, especially when Gauff proves him wrong.
Now if we go to the WTA, you got Iga Świątek from Poland, 5 Grand Slams, brutal angles. She reminds me of Martina Hingis on steroids with the angles that she gets. When you have those type of angles, you open up the court like the Red Sea. Okay, it takes a person a few more steps to get there, but more importantly, a few more to come back. So that's why she's brutal on clay. Okay, a little tougher on faster courts because she has a Western grip, sometimes gets jammed, but mentally she's rock solid. I think she'll have a bucket, double-figure Grand Slams when it's all said and done.
The timing of this prediction is also hilarious. We're heading into the 2026 season, and Gauff is coming in with momentum. She's got the Australian Open title. She's been working with her coach Brad Gilbert, who helped turn her game around. She's young, hungry, and playing some of the best tennis of her career. But Massey sees all of that and thinks, you know who's really going to dominate? The player who didn't win the Australian Open last year. Bold strategy. Let's be clear about something though. Iga Swiatek is an incredible player. She's got 5 Grand Slam titles, including 4 French Opens. She's been #1 in the world before. She's got this baseline grinding game that makes opponents want to quit tennis and take up golf instead. Nobody's saying Świątek isn't talented or doesn't deserve to be in the conversation. The issue is that Massey phrased his prediction in a way that specifically snubbed Gauff, who has done everything right lately. The phrase Polish Punisher is also doing a lot of heavy lifting in that tweet. It's like Massey was trying to create a nickname that would trend, except nobody actually calls Świątek that. She's got plenty of fans and supporters who have their own ways of celebrating her. But Polish Punisher sounds like something a wrestling promoter would come up with after 3 energy drinks. The whole thing feels forced, which makes the snub of Gauff feel even more unnecessary. What makes this situation even funnier is that Massey has this connection to Serena Williams, who has always been supportive of young American players. Serena has praised Gauff multiple times, talked about how exciting it is to see her success, and basically been the kind of mentor figure that every young athlete hopes for. So for Serena's former coach to come out and publicly dismiss Gauff in favor of a European player feels like some kind of weird betrayal of that legacy. Not that Maxi owes Serena anything, but it's definitely an interesting choice. The tennis world has noticed this too. Fans have been pointing out the irony of Maxi, who built his reputation partly on coaching the Williams sisters, two young Black American tennis prodigies, now overlooking another young Black American tennis prodigy who's literally the defending Australian Open champion. Some people think it's just a bad prediction. Others think there's something more going on. Either way, the optics aren't great for Maxi. Here's the thing about making bold predictions in sports. You better be right, or you're going to look really silly. And Maxi has set himself up for maximum embarrassment if Gauff goes on to have an amazing 2026 season. He didn't just say, "I think Swiatek will do well." He said Swiatek will be #1 before May, and specifically mentioned that she's more proven than Gauff. That's a claim that can be easily fact-checked in a few months, and if Gauff is the one holding trophies instead, those tweets are going to age like milk in the sun. The comparison between Gauff and Swiatek is interesting because they represent different styles and different paths to success. Swiatek is this methodical, grinding baseline player who mentally wears opponents down. Gauff is more athletic and explosive, with incredible speed and a game that's constantly evolving. Swiatek has had longer sustained success at the very top of the rankings. Gauff is younger and still developing, but has already shown she can win the biggest tournaments. Both are legitimate contenders for dominance in women's tennis. But Mackey's prediction isn't really about who's better between Gauff and Swiatek. It's about the fact that he went out of his way to make it clear Gauff isn't his pick, despite all the evidence suggesting she should be right there in the conversation. If he had just said, "I think Swiatek is going to have a great year," nobody would care. Instead, he structured his tweet to specifically mention Gauff and then choose someone else. That's not analysis. That's shade. The mention of Mira Andreeva in that tweet is also worth noting. Andreeva is only 18 years old and hasn't won a Grand Slam yet, but Massey included her as someone who has a shot at #1. So apparently, an 18-year-old without a slam title gets mentioned in the same breath as the defending Australian Open champion. But that defending champion still doesn't get picked as the favorite. The math isn't mathing on this one. Social media has been having a field day with this whole situation. Gauff's fans are pointing out that their girl just won a Grand Slam and questioning what more she needs to do to get respect from tennis insiders. Swiatek's fans are celebrating the endorsement but also kind of uncomfortable with how it came at Gauff's expense. And neutral tennis fans are just enjoying the drama while waiting to see who actually dominates when the tournaments start. What's really going to make this interesting is if Gauff and Swiatek end up facing each other in big matches this year. Their head-to-head record is pretty competitive, with Swiatek having won more of their encounters, but Gauff definitely capable of beating her on any given day. If they meet in a Grand Slam final and Gauff wins, you better believe people are going to dig up Massey's tweets and throw them in his face. The internet never forgets, and tennis Twitter especially never forgets. There's also the broader question of what this says about how people evaluate women's tennis players. Gauff has won 2 Grand Slams, reached multiple finals, and is clearly one of the best players in the world right now. But somehow, there's always this hesitation to fully embrace her as the face of women's tennis or the favorite for future dominance. Meanwhile, players with similar or sometimes even lesser achievements get more benefit of the doubt. It's a pattern that shows up over and over again in sports coverage and analysis. The "proven" comment from Mashai is particularly strange because Gauff has literally proven she can win Grand Slams. She won the US Open in 2023. She just won the Australian Open. What more proof does someone need? Swiatek has more slams overall, but most of them are from the French Open, where the clay court heavily favors her playing style. Gauff has won on 2 different surfaces now, showing versatility that Swiatek is still working to match outside of Roland Garros. Let's also talk about the prediction that Swiatek will be #1 before May. That's a very specific timeline, and it puts a lot of pressure on Swiatek to perform immediately in the early part of the season. The Australian Open happens in January, and if Gauff defends her title there, she's going to shoot up in the rankings. The next few months include tournaments in the Middle East, and then the spring clay season leading up to the French Open. Maxi is basically saying Swiatek will dominate all of that to the point where she overtakes whoever is #1 at the start of the year. That's a huge claim. Aryna Sabalenka, who's been #1 recently and is another player who could dominate 2026, probably feels some type of way about not even being mentioned in Machi's prediction. She's won multiple Australian Opens, has been incredibly consistent, and has the kind of power game that can blow anyone off the court. But Massey didn't include her in his list of contenders, which is its own form of disrespect. At least Gauff got mentioned before being passed over. Sabalenka didn't even make the cut, apparently. The reality is that predicting who will dominate women's tennis in 2026 is actually really difficult. The sport is incredibly competitive right now, with multiple players capable of winning any given tournament. Gauff, Swiatek, Sabalenka, and even emerging players like Andreeva all have legitimate cases for why they could be the one to separate from the pack. Making a definitive prediction requires either incredible insight or incredible confidence, and Maxi seems to have chosen the latter. What's going to be fascinating is watching how this plays out over the next few months. If Gauff starts the year strong and defends her Australian Open title, Maxi's prediction immediately looks shaky. If Swiatek struggles in Australia, but then dominates the clay season, maybe his timeline works out. But if Gauff continues to win big tournaments and Swiatek doesn't reach #1 before May, Maxi is going to have to eat a massive serving of humble pie, while tennis fans everywhere remind him of his bold proclamation. The other factor nobody's really talking about is injuries and form fluctuations. Tennis is a sport where one injury can derail an entire season. One loss of confidence can turn a dominant player into someone struggling to win matches. Maxi's prediction assumes Swiatek will stay healthy and in form, while everyone else either stays stagnant or declines. That's a lot of assumptions for a sport as unpredictable as tennis. Gauff, for her part, probably doesn't care what Rick Massey thinks. She's got her own team, her own goals, and a Grand Slam trophy that she won just recently. If anything, this kind of public doubt might actually fuel her to prove people wrong, which is when she tends to play her best tennis anyway. Athletes love using criticism as motivation, and Massey just handed her some premium bulletin board material. The most likely scenario is that 2026 ends up being a year where multiple players have their moments of dominance. Gauff might win some big tournaments. Swiatek might win others. Sabalenka will probably grab a few titles too. And at the end of the year, we'll look back at Massey's prediction and either praise his foresight or laugh at how wrong he was. Given how competitive women's tennis is right now, the latter seems more probable. One thing's for sure though, Rick Massey created way more drama with this prediction than he probably intended. What could have been a simple, "I think Swiatek will have a great year," turned into, "I'm publicly choosing Swiatek over the defending Australian Open champion." And in the age of social media, where every take gets preserved forever and thrown back at you the moment it ages poorly, that's a risky move. The instant regret might not have hit yet, but it's coming. It's definitely coming. Rick Massey's bold prediction about Iga Swiatek dominating over Coco Gauff has set up one of the most interesting storylines for 2026 tennis. Whether he ends up looking like a genius or just another person who underestimated Gauff remains to be seen. If you want more tennis drama and analysis, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.